All right, here we go, Dwayne. In three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm back with my co host, the Libra icon, Dwayne. What's going on, Dwayne?
Not too much. It's been a while. Life happens, but I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, man, feels good to be back talking sports here on the CSPN. You can find Know the Score at www.cspn.us. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and Spotify. So please download, subscribe, rate, and review. All right, Dwayne. So we just had Thanksgiving weekend. I hope everything was good for you, your family, everybody
Yeah,
was doing well.
yeah,
We
absolutely.
Of course, this is the big rivalry weekend for college football, where the last chance for some of these teams who are in the playoffs to get knocked off, or you know getting into these championship games for these conferences occur. So, of course, the big one this past Saturday took place, where Ohio State knocked off Michigan
Mm,
62-39.
mm.
That was a beat 'em down of epic proportions that nobody saw coming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This was a all I heard from, especially from the Maize and Blue contingent, how they were ready for this game and how this felt like a different year. Everybody was so hype, and let's just say by the end of the game, I did not hear a peep out of anybody. They acted like this game never existed. So, yeah, this was just a Ohio State is kind of just like the whole death taxes and Ohio State beating Michigan. And until we thought this would be the year that Michigan, who came in with probably one of the top defenses in the country, if not the number one defense in the country. I might be wrong on that, but Ohio State just dominated them um, on all parts of the defensive side, running, passing, and obviously on the scoreboard, and pretty much wrecked Michigan State, not Michigan State, but Michigan's hopes for college football playoff. And even though they got blown out to at Purdue and West Lafayette, they're right in the mix for that coveted fourth spot in the college football playoff. And we should see what happens when they play Northwestern in the Big Ten title game. It's really going to boil down to um, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and possibly Georgia. Even though I don't think Georgia would probably get that at large, or even UCF, even so. Um, this was just a tough game for Michigan, but a great season nonetheless. But I know at this point, you gotta beat the rival, and if you don't beat the rival, um, you know, it seems like every other game has been a failure, but they can't look at it that way.
Yeah, once again, Michigan just gets to this part of their season, and all their dreams and hopes has come crashing down. This is weird because it just shows you the nature of football and how it's so week to week. Because Ohio State looked dreadful against Maryland. Their defense, even though they did give up 39 points in this game, looked even worse against Maryland. Their
Right.
offense looked, shaky at best against Maryland. And then they come out in this game, and it's not good weather. It's cold, it's raining, it's damp. And they are just moving the ball up and down the field on Michigan and getting in the red zone and putting up touchdowns. It was amazing.
Yeah, and then and now kind of had a nice little playful debate with one of my favorite Ohio State people. I don't have that many, but um, I'm talking about the last year playoff, how that worked out for them. So, um, we'll just have to see how things play out championship weekend and go from there.
We had the number one team in all the land, the Alabama Clemson Tide, defeat the Auburn Tigers 52-21. At least for a half, this was a pretty entertaining and close football game.
It was.
Auburn used a little trickery to pull it within 17-14 at halftime. And then Alabama hit the nitrous in the third quarter.
Right.
And it was all she wrote after that. So
yeah, absolutely, and I was looking at this game, keeping an eye on it at work, and I was like, okay, this might be pretty interesting. I know rivalry games, you throw all the numbers and stats out the window, and then next thing I know, it's a completely different ball game. So, yeah, it's not really what I expected in terms of, Ohio. I mean, not Ohio State, but Alabama. Is this the end of the Gus Malzahn era at Auburn? Who knows? At one point, Auburn was looking like a top 10 team, and then I don't know what happened down the stretch. I don't know if injuries came into play or just better teams that came across, but Alabama's just on a whole nother level, especially with Tua quarterback and when they finally, for years, it looked like the defense carried this team and the offense just had to do just enough to win. But now with the offense matching that defense intensity, is how do you stop these guys? And Georgia, we thought Georgia had the formula. Georgia did have the formula until last year. We saw the championship game, and I don't know if they're going to have the formula in Atlanta. We shall see when that SEC championship game comes around, but it's going to be very tough down the stretch for anybody that plays Alabama.
Georgia was so good that they created this beast because they were so good they yanked Jalen Hurts to put into it to even make this what you're seeing right now even a thought in anybody's mind, let alone the reality that it is currently.
Right.
They'll have a chance to slay their own creation coming up this Saturday.
Yes.
But Clemson, they beat in-state rival South Carolina. Again, another game that was pretty close in the first half, giving Clemson a good run. I mean, South Carolina scored 28 points in the first half. But in the second half, Clemson scored 28 more points, and South Carolina only scored 7. So they were victorious 56-35. Another good game by Trevor Lawrence. And the running back, I cannot pronounce his name to save my life. Etney, he set a school record with his 19th touchdown this season. Man, he is the truth. He is so fast. So Clemson keeps rolling. They're going to be headed to Charlotte to play in the ACC championship game versus Pittsburgh. So with the last time Pittsburgh and Notre Dame and Clemson played late in the season, Pittsburgh won on a field goal, walk-off field goal. So we'll see what happens this time for the ACC championship.
All right.
The fourth team that was in the top 4 heading into the weekend, Notre Dame, they survived an upset bid from USC, 24-17. They got down early, but they persevered and they hung on for a victory in the end. Made some plays there in the second half, and the one team that we know that will more than likely be in the playoff championship race, the Final Four, whatever you want to call it, playoff 4, is Notre Dame. So, Dwayne, your nightmare has come true. It's a reality. Notre Dame is going to have a chance to win the national championship this year.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Notre Dame. I give them credit. And what we need to give them credit for is the fact that they have a good offense, they have a great defense, and they did exactly what they need to do to get into this college football playoff. Credit where it's due. And most likely, I mean, if Clemson survives Pitt, they'll most likely get Clemson in the effort in that semifinal, and then we'll see how things play out from there. Of course, you just gotta wait till Saturday. I think Clemson might still be able to have a shot at the title, win or lose. But it'll just depend on. We'll know that Notre Dame will most likely be a 2 or a 3 seed going into this college football playoff.
The Georgia Bulldogs, they beat down Georgia Tech 45-21. So they, like we said before, get a rematch to go up against Alabama in the SEC championship game, a game that they won last year. So we'll see if they can defend their title. And out in the Big 12, Oklahoma, they outlasted West Virginia 59-56. So it keeps their faint playoff hopes alive, as if, Michigan now is the team that's going to be knocked out, more than likely replaced by Georgia. And then there becomes the debate as if, Alabama defeats Georgia and let's say it's a blowout, let's say it's not close. Then does Georgia become the team that's out? And then now all of a sudden it's a Royal Rumble between Oklahoma, Ohio State to get into that, and maybe Central Florida to get into that.
That's what I was going to say too. Don't forget UCF if they stay undefeated.
Yeah, that very last playoff spot. So it would really be a bad look, I think, for Central Florida though, because their quarterback just got carted off this past game. So they wouldn't be coming into the playoff at full strength, but stranger things have happened, and there's a very good chance that this Alabama team could just go nuclear again and put up a 50 spot on a very good Georgia team, very good Georgia defense, and then chaos ensues. So just gonna have to see how these championship games play out. Again, we'll review those games. It's going to be Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC, Ohio State versus Northwestern in the Big 10, Oklahoma versus Texas in the Big 12, Clemson versus Pitt in the ACC.
Yeah.
So, just some coaching carousel news before we move on from college football. It looks like Les Miles is coming back to coaching. It looks like he's going to become the coach of Kansas. And the University of North Carolina fired Larry Fedora, and the rumors are they're going to hire Mack Brown again. And Mack Brown's going to try to put together a package with himself, Cliff Kingsbury, who recently got fired from Texas Tech as offensive coordinator, and Gene Chizik, who was the defensive coordinator at North Carolina 3 seasons ago, but had to step down due to health issues in his family. And then he went on to do television for ESPN. So he's trying to come in reportedly with that package, and he will take over for Larry Fedora. Now, I did not think that North Carolina would be in the business of paying Larry Fedora $12 million not to do anything, because he had 4 years at $3 million left on his contract still. But I think that if you saw the end of the North Carolina NC State game, there's a big brawl that broke out between the teams. NC State scored the winning touchdown in overtime, and with the back-to-back 2-9 seasons, I just think it just didn't look good in front of the North Carolina home crowd. And I just think, right then it was probably like, he probably could have made it through this season just due to the money factor, but I think they were ready to just say, okay, let's just start over. But wow, starting over with Mack Brown is something else, man.
All right.
He hadn't coached in
All
6 years, and it wasn't that good when he, stepped down from Texas. So
yeah, and I think with that whole Matt Brown situation, never know. Just so that you never know when that you have to go back and cross that bridge. So, Matt Brown, he had a good gig going at ESPN, but I think he was ready to get back into coaching, and while nobody else really called, I think going back to North Carolina would be best for him and the program. And if he does get Kingsbury to come in as his OC, that will definitely bring a whole dynamic to the ACC in terms of keeping up with Clemson and NC State and those kind of schools. And then with the Kansas hire, Les Miles, I mean, either it's going to go one or two ways. Either it's going to be really successful. If Les Miles can get the meter moving in terms of the offense at Kansas, and because the Big 12 is offensive league, I mean it's pretty much 7-on-7. So, and if he tries to if he tries to put the SEC style of play in the Big 12, it might turn into a Charlie Weiss situation. I think that's what Charlie Weiss tried to do when he was at Kansas, try to slow it down, and he got 8 alive. And for the last 10 years, Kansas football has pretty much been a black hole in that whole athletic department, especially with, being one of the top 5 basketball programs ever. And the football team, who hasn't had a good season in 10 years when they went, or 11 years when they went to the Orange Bowl under Mark Mangino. And, I mean, you had Turner Gill, which didn't work. Charlie Wise didn't work. David Beatty didn't work. So it's going to be a challenge, and we'll just see if Les can adapt to this current Big 12, or is he going to perish?
All right, so that's college football for this week. We'll transition over to the NBA, where Jimmy Butler, he finally got traded. They got traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, initially, I didn't think this move was very good because Philly has been struggling with, guess what? Shooting the ball, because they made J.J. Redick go to the bench so they could play Markelle Fultz. And now you play Markelle Fultz with Ben Simmons, and you got 2 out of your 5 guys on the court who can't shoot a jumper.
Right.
So they trade Sarge and
who can shoot?
Yeah, who can shoot? And so,
and Robert Covington, who can also shoot.
Yeah, Robert Covington, who can shoot and play a little defense. So now you get Jimmy Butler back in return. Markelle Fultz is his own saga still, as he's had some evaluations on his wrist coming up here in the past couple of days that everybody's seen kind of caught off guard by. But Jimmy Butler's hit 2 game winners in the time that he's been there in Philly. So, like me, were you kind of curious when this trade was made and who got traded for Philly, considering what their obvious weakness is and continues to be?
Absolutely, I was curious. I kind of saw this and scratched my head, like, how is this going to benefit the Philadelphia 76ers going forward? I mean, yes, Jimmy Butler does have that intensity. He does have that leadership that this team probably does need. They probably do need another veteran voice who has seen, aside from J.J. Redick, who has seen playoff. Who've seen the playoffs before. Um, I don't know if it's good for the psyche of Markel Fultz. I mean, we've already seen how that's gone over the last couple, last season and quarter right now. Um, and I looked at this and I saw Sarge. Kobe didn't really come to me until after I looked at the trade a little bit more, and I was like, "Wait a minute! You lose your top 3-point shooter. You lose a guy who can shoot inside and out, and then do I think the Sixers did a little too much to get Jimmy Butler? Yes. Do I think they'll be okay though? Yes, they will find a way for it to work. I think Jimmy Butler has already kind of spoken out about the differences between playing on the Sixers and his time in Minnesota. He's already alluded to the fact that, hey, I can tell these guys, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, and they won't get upset about it. So, kind of just alludes to what was going on in Minnesota. Pretty much, he could not get Towns or Wiggins to essentially cooperate with him. So, um, but I think this was a trade that I thought Miami had the best deal for Minnesota. That did not go through, and I think that's kind of definitely on top of Thibodeau, who thought he could convince Jimmy Butler that he could stay and work it out, and we see that did not work out at all. So Tibbs' job could be on the line as a result of this.
Yeah, definitely for sure. He overplayed his hand. He should have right when he came into that practice and basically, mooned everybody with his actions. He should have been traded within the next 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
But, he's trying to, because again, when you're the coach and you're the general manager or team president or whatever, basketball operations director, whatever title, that other title you get onto, it starts to cloud up your basketball, your coaching. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You want to stay the coach, because if you stay the coach, then you get to stay the team president or, whatever. And it's so, that's the only thing he was thinking about. Hey, I need Jimmy Butler to make the playoffs because he's really right about my guys, my other team.
Right.
And if I don't make the playoffs, I might not get, retained. And so thus, that's the reason why he was trying to hold on so long for some blow away deal or last minute, reversal of fortune by Jimmy Butler. But, at least for the Timberwolves' sake, Karl-Anthony Towns, for his own psyche and his own respectability, has played a lot better.
Right.
Since Jimmy Butler has not been there. Now, Andrew Wiggins, that's a little bit different story. So
yeah.
We'll see how that continues to develop. We'll shift over to the defending world champions, two-time. The Warriors they were in a little bit of a tailspin. They got a dramatic win over the Sacramento Kings, who are quite a story right now in this bizarro world of the NBA that we're kind of going through in this first quarter of the season.
Which has been refreshing, by the way.
Right. We had an issue between Kevin Durant and Draymond Green in a game that they lost to the Clippers, where coming down in the last minutes of the fourth quarter, of course, everybody knows Draymond did not give the ball up to anyone, including Kevin Durant, who was
channels his inner Carlton. I remember that.
Yeah, and he kicked the ball away, and they called the turnover, and that basically led to an overtime loss by the Warriors. And during that timeout in between, the overtime and regulation, Durant and Draymond got into some heated words on the bench, and that led to Draymond getting suspended by the team. That led to, a lot of speculation about, Kevin Durant's future. And then that sent the actual Warriors into a tailspin, because the game before this, Steph Curry who was having an MVP type season, injured his groin, and he's been out for the past 2 weeks or so. And so the injuries, the discontent in the locker room, and the Warriors did something they hadn't done in almost like 5 years now. They lost 4 games in a row.
All right.
So, do you think this is something that's going to, stick with them as far as this locker room stuff, or you think that was just the isolated incident and they can kind of smooth it out, and once Steph comes back, everything will be, back in working order?
I think when Steph does come back, it will be okay. However, right now, you still gotta wonder if Durant and Draymond are they still gonna be civil towards one another, and when the mission is to get another ring, the they check their egos. They're good at checking their egos at the door. And I think that's one thing Steph is good for. He can keep the peace between the two. And, whatever happens after that is out of whatever happens after that. Um, I don't I don't think the Warriors are gonna just come out and win 60 something straight games. However, when they get their full complement of players, they're gonna have a nice little dominant run, and then everything should be all right from there.
All right, all right. Now we talked about the kind of upside down nature of the NBA season so far. So let me read you the first 5 teams in the Eastern Conference. Right now we have Toronto number 1, Milwaukee number 2, Philadelphia number 3, Detroit number 4, and the Pacers number 5. Now you would think to hear Boston somewhere in there, but they're actually at number 7 at 10-10, just playing 500 ball. So Dwayne, I know that you're really in tune to the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with Boston, man?
Well, it's a lot of. I think the expectations are kind of weighing on them a lot, and they're not playing an efficient offensive game. One could say it's probably something more mental than anything. I think Jason Tatum hasn't performed as well as he had all of last year after Gordon Hayward came out, who himself has went back to decided to go come off the bench, and even then, it still hasn't been as good of a start as it can be. Um, our, there's another issue with the goaltending, I would say, and as well as the defense. With the Celtics too. I'm not saying goaltending. I meant like the defensive side of things. And with the defensive side of things, they're still among the league leaders in defense. However, they're not making smart decisions down the stretch, which allows opponents to stay in the game and engage. And, a lot of teams are trying to come at their Boston's head because they were picked by many to win these. And now it's a situation where every game now, from this quarter on, has to be a must-win situation. And, you know, everybody's going to have to do their part in making sure not what's the word I'm looking for? Not overwhelmed, not frustrated
Yeah,
because
everybody's
it,
trying to do too much to pull them out of the malaise instead of just working together as a team to
exactly.
do it together. I got you.
E- Exactly. So I think once they could get it together, I think this wouldn't be as bad if Toronto wasn't off to such a great start, and also if Philly wasn't doing as well as they are right now.
Yeah,
You take away,
I think the surprise that everybody's really looking at is Milwaukee. Now they got a
man.
new coach, and man, they're really taking off. They're 10-2 at home in the
Yes,
arena.
new arena, new building, new energy. You know, the deer need to be feared right now in Milwaukee. So, um, I doesn't surprise me when Mike Budenholzer has something to work with. He can actually get. He actually is a very good coach. Look at the first years of his time in Atlanta when he had great pieces to work with, and the Hawks had that success when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. And
Man, the Bucks are putting up some. They hit 135 on somebody the other night. Like,
they
goodness
did,
gracious.
they did, and Giannis Antetokounmpo has been playing lights out, MVP like numbers. So it's definitely something to see.
All right, let's switch over to the West. Let's give the Western Conference some love. Let's particularly give the Los Angeles Clippers some love. They're the best
Mm-hmm.
in the West right now. They play one less game than Golden State. They're 13-6. Golden State is second, even with their 4-game losing streak. And then you've got Denver, Memphis, OKC, Portland, the Lakers, and New Orleans. So missing, you don't see Houston, you don't see San Antonio, some of the usual suspects that we're accustomed to in the Western Conference. So talk about the Clippers. We kind of knew Denver was going to be a player this year coming into the season. A lot of people had them, kind of on the radar this year. But let's talk about the Clippers in Memphis because I don't think a lot of people thought that Memphis was going to JB Bickerstaff
I'm,
coming in
I'm,
and they didn't know what they were doing.
yeah,
But they're
yeah.
one of the best teams in the West right now.
I'm definitely glad you brought up the Grizzlies along with the Clippers because let's give Doc Rivers a lot of credit because he made some moves he got rid of. I mean, we thought when Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan all left Los Angeles, the Clippers are going to go back to being the Clippers that we've all known them to be. But with Steve Ballmer's backing, with Doc Rivers making wise moves in the front office and his coaching, the Clippers have definitely responded to that. Tobias Harris has been great. Marcin Gortat has looked revived. He's not in that black hole in Washington anymore. And this is a great team that is being put out. And, you know, they're still, at the moment, they're still better than the Lakers, who have a lot more stars down. You thought the Lakers were going to die. Many people thought the Lakers were going to be better than what they are right now. So um, a lot of things are gelling for the Clippers right now. As long as they stay healthy, as long as they stay engaged with what Doc is preaching out there, this team could remain up there on trying to fight for home court in the Western Conference. And meanwhile in Memphis, then let's say this with the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies had so many injuries last year, and it showed. You didn't have Mike Conley, you didn't have Marc Gasol, you didn't have a lot. You didn't have a Chandler Parsons. You didn't have a lot of players that are supposed to have been there for this Grizzlies team that are back healthy. Mike Conley's playing lights out. Marc Gasol has been effective. Um, and Jaren Jackson Jr., they're the fourth pick in the draft this year. he's made a lot of good strides as well. And with the new look, I like the new look the Grizzlies have uniform wise. And the build, like they've invested like a lot of, like, Robert Perez actually done a good job of investing into this team. Like, you know, they're grinding very hard, and they're living back up to that grit and grind mentality that they have developed there. And JB Vickers' staff has done a great job with this team, and very interested to see, as long as they stay healthy, how far, if they can make that return to the playoffs as well.
Yeah, it'll be very fun to check out the Western Conference this year. We all think that Golden State can get their stuff together, but after that, it's wide open. So we'll see how the order, reshuffles up and what the, standings start to look like around the All-Star break. Most people won't really start paying attention until later in December, Christmas, when, the NBA becomes, really a focus on people's radar. So, teams are jockeying to get in position, to be relevant, through that point in time. So it's going to be a fun NBA season, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And League Pass has been a very great investment. I will say that.
What's also a great investment, Dwayne?
What's that?
Supporting the CSPN and going to CSPN.us, clicking on the tab that says "Keep Our Podcast Free," clicking on the Amazon link, do that last minute deal shopping for Cyber Monday, or whatever Tuesday they're going to have something up tomorrow, because it's all about selling this week. So do your shopping as you normally would and help out the CSPN, as some of your purchase will come back to us to help keep all the podcasts, especially Know the Score, free each and every week. So please, Amazon.com through CSPN.us, do it today. All right, now it's time to talk about the National Football League. We're going to start with the topic that I'm not really too thrilled to be talking about and discussing right off the top.
I'll be feeling the same in a few minutes. So I get it.
But the last time we did this show, the Washington football team was in first place all alone. They'd won like 3 games in a row. They were looking pretty sporty. And then the injuries have happened to offensive linemen, the quarterback, unfortunately, and some very eerie, bizarre type, once in a lifetime numerology type stuff. Alex Smith suffers the same injury as Joe Theismann on the very same day. 33 years to the day. Alex Smith is 33 years old. The score was the same score, 23-19. The Redskins won that game. And it happened on the same part of the field, the same yard line as well. So just all kinds of crazy stuff. And so they lost that game to Houston. And the Washington football team had to travel down to their arch rivals, the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys, they moved into a tie for first place after their 3rd win in a row. 31-23 with the help of backup quarterback Colt McCoy of the Washington football team, giving them 3 interceptions and scoring 21 points in about an 8-minute stretch. Dallas took a close game, blew it open. Washington fought back, but ran out of time and got on the wrong side of some flags from the refs on some calls that could have kind of extended their comeback. But give all respect to the Cowboys. We thought they were dead when they lost to Tennessee, and again they probably should have won. They left nothing. Tennessee came back on them. Pretty much thought they were over, but then they decided to give the ball to Zeke and throw it to Amari Cooper exclusively, and they won 3 in a row and really exposed the Washington defense for their lack of speed in the secondary and linebacker positions. Amari Cooper with 2 back-breaking catch-and runs. Dak Prescott was scrambled through the whole defense touchdown. Just really, really spoiled my Thanksgiving. I was having a pretty good day until about 6 o'clock that night. So, talk about Dallas getting Amari Cooper. They paid a hefty price. He started slow, but here in these last 2 wins, he's really come on, especially in this game against Washington.
Yeah, this was a situation where Dallas had him pull the trigger and make a move, and they made the right move. They're willing to pay the price to get the season jump started, and now you got a playmaker, Amari Cooper, that has somebody you can rely on a lot more. Somebody that will get the ball, move the ball, and allow the Cowboys also make sure they keep the ball running and the running game going, I should say. And so now with that being said, the offense is taking off again. The defense is responding as well. And 3 straight wins later, you have a race now in the NFC East. It looked like Washington was in control. They were in control, and because the Eagles were struggling, the Cowboys struggling, and ever since the boat picture, the Giants haven't been the same. So we know that's pretty much not even anything to talk about. But now, Dallas and Washington tied for first. Cowboys got the tiebreaker there, as well as the Eagles, who are a game out. So nothing is.
Here's the pending situation that's probably the highest probability that's going to be possible. Dallas is going to get shredded by the Saints on Thursday night. And then Washington plays Philly on Monday night. And the Washington track record on primetime games, especially Monday night football. So on Tuesday morning, you could be looking at 3 teams at 6-6, with Washington leaking all of the oil, because that will be 3 losses in a row, and then it will be going from can we make the playoffs to Jay Gruden about to get fired.
Right.
And so when you're a fan of a team that doesn't really win a lot, you realize that, man, if you can get through October and most of November with no injuries and a pretty good record, when you get to December or around Thanksgiving, every game you play is like the biggest game you played. Like, oh, this game was big last week. Last week's game was big against Houston, but the game against Dallas was even bigger because it was like, here's the team that's right behind us. We need to beat them to kind of get our 2-game lead back. Okay, that didn't work out, but now we play Philly. So this game was even bigger than the last week's game because now we can get back on track. And if we need to keep pace, but more than likely, we're maybe back in the lead by ourselves. So it's going to be a difficult little proposition for Washington going forward. I mean, Alex Smith wasn't busting a great, but he wasn't turning the ball over. That was allowing Washington to play defense and use teams, and Colt McCoy is going to turn the ball over.
Yeah, well, there is a quarterback sitting and waiting. So
that ain't happening.
No, yeah, we know they're not going to pull the trigger.
That ain't
just saying.
They picked up Mark Sanchez because they had to have a quarterback because they only carry 2. So that lets you know that that wasn't happening. But oh well.
And I don't think Mark Sanchez was going to be any better than Colt McCoy, to be honest. So
the thing that could help Colt McCoy is he's been in the offense for 4.5 seasons, and he basically played that game with no live practice. He had some walkthroughs and some mental stuff, but he didn't actually throw to anybody or move around actively and have a week of full practice. So coming into this Philly game, So have a week of full practice. He got played in the game, so hopefully we'll get a better performance, a winning performance, as I root
Yeah,
openly here on my
yeah.
podcast for the Washington football team. We'll move up I-95 a little bit farther to Baltimore, where due to injury, Lamar Jackson has had to start the last two games, and he's won the last two games as he beat the Ravens this past weekend, 34-17. He had a lot of help from his friends. He got Terrell Suggs had a fumble recovery. They had a punt return. His running game was really good. He threw around less than 20 passes, completed about 50 to 55% of them. Ran around again for close to 100 yards. So they're managing the game with him and using their defense to kind of wear teams down, and then they can kind of pull away in the fourth quarter. So Baltimore's going to have a real conundrum coming up because it looks like Flacco may be well enough to play this upcoming week, but they're on a hot streak with Lamar Jackson. So, Dwayne, you're John Harbaugh. What do you do this week?
Well, yeah, this is a conundrum because Lamar Jackson's won the last two games. He's pretty much got you back in the playoff race. And you don't want to shatter his confidence by saying, hey, we're going back to the veteran. So I would probably stick with the rookie, stick with the hot hand. And, I mean, this was going to happen eventually. I mean, either Joe Flacco's going to get hurt and he's going to take over, or Joe Flacco's going to be bad and he just is going to take over anyway. Either way, the Ravens have won these two games, and either way, Lamar Jackson is going to be starting anyway because I think Joe Flacco was just too inconsistent anyway. So I would just continue to run the hot hand and see how it goes from there.
All right. Speaking of a hot hand, Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, they keep their playoff hopes alive with a 30-27 win over Dwayne's Carolina Panthers. The Panthers and Seahawks, they match up very well against each other. All of their games that they played since Cam Newton and Russell Wilson have been the quarterbacks of these teams have come down to the last minute, last drive, last second. So this game was no different. Carolina was lining up for a long field goal with about a minute and some change left. Graham Gano, your coach is weird, but anyway, he'll try to go for the two on the road in a game that they probably should just go ahead and kick and play it out.
I actually didn't. I was not mad at that decision at all. You're on the road, try to steal the win on the road.
And the game you weren't playing well, so yeah, I can see him. I can understand the logic of let's just get the hell out of here because our field goal kicker's been awful. We probably
exactly
should position. So let's just go ahead and get it and go.
Exactly, and then Cam should have ran the ball in because he had all day long.
Or he did that. Or he did the one thing. I've been watching Cam a lot this year. He did the one thing that he hasn't really done a lot this season, where when he does have that time like that and he's scanning, he threw off his back foot. A lot of times this season, he's actually been resetting his feet and stepping and throwing. If he would have just stepped and threw the ball, he would have hit that dude right in the chest and you would have got a 2-point conversion and beat Detroit.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so those were the two things in that game because there's a couple times where he was wide open and he could have done exactly those two things we said, either ran or reset the feet, and he would have been good. He would have been golden. But Gano's been off he was off in Detroit, which I had zero problem with Rivera saying go for two. Devin Funches didn't help anything by dropping 5 passes. But to this game here against Seattle, Goodell channeled in his inner Florida State Seminole, and he went wide right. Cornelder, who gave up that touchdown in the fourth that tied the game for Seattle, all he had to do was turn around one time. Just take a look, turn around. But he did not, and that just shows how much of an impact that Dante Jackson has had on this team. Even as a rookie, he went out with a quad injury in the first quarter, and he did not return. And that put Cornelder in, and Russell Wilson picked him apart. Another that when Wilson hit Tyler Lockett to set up that field goal, Captain Motherland was out of play, and I think Cornelder was another reason why. Because I don't know what happened in the coverage, but there's no reason why Tyler Lockett should have been that wide open. And yeah, so now my thing is, and I wrote this early this morning when I was having all these thoughts in my head, because sometimes I have these thoughts, and I think the Saints got into the Panthers' heads. Honestly, I think Carolina started getting caught up with what New Orleans was doing, even when they were just a game behind, and as a result, the Saints got into their heads. The Panthers got demolished at Pittsburgh. They lost the game they should have won against Detroit on the road, and they lost the game that they should have won at home against Seattle. So it's now down to, Carolina has traditionally done well in December since Ron Rivera's been head coach. They are 23-9 in the month of December under Rivera and Cam Newton. So we're going to see if they could channel that December magic. Is going to be hard to go 5-0 or even 4-1 to get that 10-win season, because they got the Saints twice in 3 weeks, one on Monday night where they don't do well in primetime games. We already seen that. And then they got the last game of the season at New Orleans. And now they're behind the 8 ball because they lost to Washington, and now they lost to Seattle, and they are now on the outside looking in because Washington has the 6th spot, Seattle has the 7th spot, Carolina sitting 8th because of the tiebreakers.
This would set up, if the playoffs started today, another Dallas and Washington game in Dallas. If we could somehow move, because we're 6th, right? And Seattle's 5, right?
Minnesota's 5.
Oh yeah, so we're still not in there yet.
Actually, no. Washington has a tiebreaker over Seattle.
Okay. Right? Yeah. So we would still have to, because the Bears have a better record than Dallas, right?
Right. So it'd be Washington and Chicago, and Minnesota and Dallas.
Yeah. Washington and Chicago, that would not be a good matchup for the Washington football team. That would be bad. We need to somehow figure out a way to go play Dallas again.
Right.
And then there could be a possibility we could win still a game. But yeah, we would get rolled in Chicago just because their defensive line would maim our patchwork new offensive line.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Saints, you brought them up. They continue to roll with a Thanksgiving night win over Atlanta, 31-17. So they basically put Atlanta out of their misery. Atlanta's been kind of hanging around, but that game pretty much knocked them out of all, talk about playoffs for this year. Saints are just one of these teams where, if you can't score, then, good luck after the first quarter. Because if they make you punt once, that's 7 points. If they make you punt twice, that's 14. If they make you punt 3 times, then warm up the bus.
Right, and I just think that the defense is good, but teams can score on this defense. They just I don't know what it is if
When
they're
you
just
play
not.
from ahead though, and especially at home, if they get out in front of you in the first quarter is 17-3, and you kind of don't stick with your running game, then yeah, you're lunch, because once you start going three and out, man, they finna take the ball like they did against Philly, and then every time you look up, it's like 4 plays they in the red zone, 5 plays they in the red zone. Like, hey, Philly just had the ball, 3 plays giving it back up, they run 7 plays, they score a touchdown. Like,
Right.
and that's like over and over and over again. It's not like one team. Some teams are like good in the first quarter, stuck in the second quarter, okay after halftime, and then like late in the fourth quarter they're good. No, the Saints are good like the whole game.
Right. Right. But part of me just feels like and I might get ethered for this by Saints fans, but part of me just feels like they're gonna choke at some point. They're gonna choke at the wrong time. Usually, like in the playoffs. I mean, if they're at home, that'll be one thing. But I just feel like there's gonna be that one game where they're gonna have a bad game, and
Yeah,
it's a wrap.
that's the way that they would lose. Is if I don't necessarily see Drew Brees throwing a lot of interceptions, but if they had a game where you get strip sacked or they fumble twice or something like that, or they miss
Mm-hmm.
some field goals, yeah, it's gonna be something that they inflict upon themselves. So while
Mm-hmm.
they lose, I don't think anybody's gonna just come out here and just beat them and where they score like 17 points or something,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So
But yeah. But it's a juggernaut out there. I think the Rams would love to get another shot at them. Um, we'll just have to see.
oh, you broke up, man. You still with me? Oh, you're trying. Dwayne?
My bad.
Oh, hold on. You dropped on me, so let me get you back in.
Okay.
All right. In three, two, one. So we'll talk about one more thing here, Dwayne. We'll talk about the Chiefs and the Rams game from last Monday night that
Oh
ended
man.
up being the highest scoring game on Monday Night Football ever, 54-51 in regulation, no overtime. Um,
Yes.
some people thought that it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. Some people thought it was too much offense and were clamoring for some semblance of defense. Some people were just like mind blown and didn't know what to say after the game. What was your take, sir?
I was I just thought it was just 7-on-7. I mean, there was no reason why you needed four extra bodies because of all the points that were being put up. But one thing I did notice though is Patrick Mahomes has a tendency of not throwing the ball away. He'll actually throw a YOLO throw and try to force something to happen, and that's probably one way you can beat this kid is if you try to make him if you try to force him into a throw that he does not want to make, or if he tries to force the issue, he's gonna turn the ball over. Um, as impressive as he was with his yards and everything and the touchdowns, he had 3 interceptions, 2 of them in garbage time when he was trying to make something happen. Um, but this game was just loaded with offense. I was kind of just I was flipping back and forth between Raw and the game, and I was like, "Yo, like they're gonna be any kind of defense." And I've seen some people say, "How's the Super Bowl gonna top this?" Well, this was actually the Super Bowl, blah blah blah. But we shall. I don't know what's going to happen come February 3rd in Atlanta, but we're just gonna have to just see how things wind up. And but this was a great game. This was a fun game to watch, fun game to be a part of social media on, and I really enjoyed the effort from both teams in this game. I know defensive coordinators had me pulling their hair out trying to stop them, but sometimes the offenses are just clicking, and both offenses were. You just got to tip your hat to those offensive coordinators making it happen.
The happiest person who had to be watching that game had to be Will Greer because he's like, yes, two air raid quarterbacks putting up these numbers. That means that I'm the premier air raid quarterback in college football. Somebody's going to draft me in the first round because they're going to try to replicate that type of scheme and that system. Because I think it took, what's this, 2018, it took 6 years for somebody else to come in. Robert and Kaepernick did it with the running part of the spread. Like, oh, this read option stuff can work in the NFL if you use it judiciously and in the right places and the right down and distance. Oh, it does make the defense have to, really work and prepare for one more thing. But, everybody's still so afraid of the quarterback getting hurt. But Patrick Mahomes has proved that the passing part of this, where you just stand in the shotgun, run out of the shotgun, spread the field all the way from the sideline to sideline, and make it a one-on-one read where, even if they play zone, it's going to be somebody that's going to be out there one-on-one. And, it's just a simple one read. If it's not there, then you go to his check down. It's really simple football, but, Andy Reid puts all that window dressing on it and makes it look very complex. But I think that's finally going to be, because a guy like Andy Reid has finally adopted it. It's going to finally usher in the college, more college type offense, which allows more guys in college now to be able to play.
Yeah, and not only will it benefit Will Greer, I mean, we're gonna be eventually we're gonna be looking at teams that are gonna need a starting quarterback. I mean, the Giants are gonna be looking for one. Um, the Jaguars are gonna need one, considering how badly they've slid. I mean, they're going to turn to Cody Kessler next week, and
they fired their offensive coordinator.
right. And Blake Bortles is finally going to the bench where he should have been a long time ago. Um, that's really all. That's really all I have in regards to that. Like it's gonna be up to. It's gonna be up to whoever at whatever direction they want to go in on the offensive end. Um, and then we'll just see how they go from this point moving forward.
All right, one last thing we'll touch on before we turn it over to the shout outs and thank yous. Dwayne, run through some college basketball notes right quick. Gonzaga, they defeated the almighty Duke Blue Devils to win the Maui Invitational. Gonzaga was number 3 coming into the game in the nation. Duke, of course, number 1 with the, all-star, all-world, stellar class, best team ever, type hype. Well, Gonzaga hung an L on them, and they are the new number 1. Texas, they got upset. Texas upset North Carolina out in Vegas and that invitational. And your Kansas Jayhawks pulled out a tight one over Tennessee, a game they probably should have lost. But, they made the good plays down the stretch. Tennessee didn't, and Kansas pulled it out.
Yeah, Duke and let's first Duke and Gonzaga. I figured when I saw this Maui Invitational bracket that these two would be on a collision course with each other. And I thought, well, it's ranked as highly ranked Gonzaga's is going to probably be Duke's best test of the season. I mean, let's face it, Kentucky wasn't a test. I mean, they were pretty much it was pretty much men against boys with that
Live
one.
action practice is what I call that.
Right. And so the when I saw Gonzaga, a team that's more experienced, a lot older, that have been together for quite some time, and I knew they would be able to, you know, make these boys work. And it wasn't gonna. This was Duke's first true test of the season, and for a while, Gonzaga showed like their dominance. Like they were up pretty big early in the second half before Duke used this athleticism to get back in the game and make it close towards the end. But um, I was surprised with Texas upsetting North Carolina. I did not see that one coming. Big win for Shaka Smart. We know it's probably going to be one of his make or break years right here. I think a lot of people have the Longhorns going second in the Big 12 or third in the Big 12 behind. They're going to be right there with Kansas State, behind obviously Kansas for the Big 12 title. Kansas, yeah, this is a team that has shown they can win in many different ways. They can either win um, comfortably or they can win ugly. This game against Tennessee, which I've viewed as a very, very good test for them, only due to the fact that Tennessee is bringing back. They brought back the same squad. Nobody left for the draft. There's really a lot more addition than subtraction with all the stars still being together. And shout out to those boys at Knoxville for the great win. Great wins in the NIT tournament. And this is going to be a good team going forward. Should be definitely challenging for the SEC crown once again. So credit where is due. Shout out to the Volunteers.
All right, man. So that's a wrap as far as getting everybody updated on, what's been taking place recently in the last couple of weeks in the sports world. I'm pretty sure we left some things out. Le'Veon Bell didn't report, so he's a free agent. And me and my buddy at work, we were trying to figure out like where he would go in the free agent market, and you start kind of looking around the dudes and the teams. There's not a lot of teams right now that you would think that are in the market for a running back. I'm thinking like the Packers might try to make a run at him. I would say Indy, but it looks like they're kind of going to stick with their young core. They got 3 guys that they're pretty happy with right now.
Right.
Who else did we say? There's really, if you start going through the different divisions, there's not a lot of teams that really need a running back.
No, not at all. I mean, the Panthers released C.J. Anderson, so that shows you.
But they got McCaffrey though, so
yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
Spend the money to. Yeah, maybe the Bucks would be in the market, but I think they like Philip Barber though.
Yeah.
Because here's what's gonna. I know we're outside of the NFL and we're kind of just rambling here, but here's the thing though. It's gonna be hard for him to get the money he wants on any team, especially a team that's really good.
Right.
If he wants to get Todd Gurley, where he's anywhere between 15 to 19 million this season, and even if he goes to a bad team, you know what I'm saying, they're going to be a bad team for a while because they're paying him so much. Like the Jets may be a player. The Jets may decide they want to get a running back to go with Darnold. premier running back. But I mean, it's really only like 2 or 3 real legitimate places that are like, starving for a running back that may be in the sweepstakes. So it's gonna be real interesting to see how that plays out in March once that free agency period opens for him.
Exactly, and yeah, and I was just like you said, like when you were on down the divisions, I was going down doing the same thing, just thinking off the top of my head, and the NFC West is out, the NFC South is out, the East is out. I mean, you could probably say Philadelphia because they really don't have a premier running back. Philly would be. I mean, you don't have to worry about anything in um, Minnesota or Chicago, things of that sort. Um, yeah, there's really not that much. There's really not that much if you really take a look and just really look at the teams there, and yeah, it's gonna be good luck lately on trying to get something,
Like
get what you're
Denver,
looking for.
Denver might have been a player, but now that Lindsey's actually proven he's good, they're
Um,
out.
yeah, right. And
So
then you got L.A. Chargers with Gordon and Eckler. That's out, and yeah, that's it. So
yeah, he could be really looking at a much. He probably could be looking at around might having to take like a $14 million deal,
all right,
which would be like 2 million more than he would have made if he played for the franchise, but probably about 5 million less than he would actually want to play for.
right.
Unless he's just like, hey, I don't like none of this, and I'm just retired. And who says he wouldn't do that? He was, nobody thought he'd sit the whole season out, and he did. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's going to be a very interesting off season. See what roster turnovers, what moves are made, and who will have the space that will bring Le'Veon over to their respective teams.
yeah. So Dwayne, I open it up to you, man, for your shout outs, final thoughts, ending comments.
Uh, shout outs to our CSPN family. Shout out to all the hosts, the panelists who come in, all of our guests that come to our shows. Also, shout out to Jesse Nabias as always. Shout out to you, Don. Good to be back. And also, shout out to my family that stays listening as well. So I definitely appreciate the love there. My final thought is 7 overtimes, Texas A&M and LSU. Even though there was well, not some, there was controversy throughout
Kabuki,
the overtime period.
very
Yeah,
kabuki-ish.
yes. So it was really a wild game. Had everything in terms of the drama, in terms of the back and forth. The fifth game in college football history that's gone to 7 overtimes. There's never been an eighth. Texas A&M won 74-72. I first looked at this and thought it was a basketball score. Then I actually looked. I was like, no, this is football. So
I'd be
this
I'd be very interested to see if their basketball teams approach a score that high.
we might have to keep an eye on that when they play each other this season. And I think many people will keep an eye on that too. So definitely a good idea to check that out. Um, so yeah, but this was definitely a wild game. Had everything. Um, Final, so that it was just crazy, and I'll just leave it at that. Oh yeah, shout out to North Carolina A&T for making the Celebration Bowl for the third time. They made it last year and they won. They made it 2 years ago. They won that one. Of course, the only other MEAC representative was North Carolina Central, and they lost because of excessive celebration penalty. So, we
You just
A&T
can't
plays.
pass up an opportunity to rub it in, can you? Wouldn't be a rival. Wouldn't be a rival if you didn't take the opportunities to rub it.
Exactly. But so A&T weighing the winner of the SWAC title game, Southwest Athletic Conference title game between Southern and Alcorn State. A&T beat Alcorn State in the first Celebration Bowl. Southern trying to get there for the first time. So we shall see what happens.
All right. Thank you, Dwayne. I'd like to give a shout out to you for joining me. I'd like to give a shout out to everybody who listens to Know the Score. Thank you for bearing with us during this little break, but we're back. Hopefully we'll be much more consistent heading into the playoffs and, NBA season really getting turned up. I'd just like to give a shout out to everybody here on the CSPN. Give a shout out to Jesse and Tobias, all the listeners, all the podcast hosts. My final thought will be congratulations to Joey Logano, who became this year's NASCAR Series champion. He won the final race in Homestead, Miami to become the champion. A guy who came into the sport with a lot of expectations at 20 years old. Mark Martin said he was so good and so pure. He was the best thing since sliced bread. And he had a lot of expectations and probably too big of a expectation and spotlight put on him. He kind of flamed out when he was driving for Joe Gibbs. He moved on at the end of his contract to Penske, and he's found a lot more success, and he found the ultimate success this past season where he won the championship a couple of weeks ago. So shout out to Joey Logano for reaching his full potential. He's 27 years old. He's a veteran in the sport, and he's got a NASCAR championship. So, a lot of pressure, I'm pretty sure, is off of him personally, professionally, and I look forward to big things going forward from him. He should win a lot more races and just be a lot more confident in the way that he approaches things going forward. When you get championship rings, there's a lot that, comes with that as far as, your personality and how you carry yourself and your swag and what you can do. So I'm looking forward to Joey Logano being an all-time great going forward here in NASCAR. So for my co-host, the Libra icon, I'm Don De Laurenti, and now you know the score. All right, Dwayne. That was good, my man. Glad to be back in the saddle with you again.
Awesome.
So